When I feel like I look mad raggedy, like it's just a plain black t-shirt, so I feel like I look mad raggedy. But anyway, I give Hilo, myself, not fondly, I give Hilo full permission to set the world on fire. I just want him to set the world on fire. Everybody gotta die. If you're not with the cause, you against the cause. Hello everybody, my name is CHIOMA or Chi, and today I'm going to be doing my January, why did that take so long? January wrap up. See, I wasn't gonna do a January wrap up because when it came to books and reading in January, I didn't do much of it. I read 3 books in January and like 10 mangas, and I called it a month. And I didn't do nothing else. So, I wasn't gonna do one, but 101 ways to procrastinate on my thesis, am I right? So I am going to be talking about those 3 books and all of the mangas that I read in January, so let's go. So let's talk about the first book. I actually did a whole reading vlog on this that I'm not gonna post because I still don't get reading vlogs. I don't get them. I don't understand them. I can't. So let's talk about Jade City. Listen, Jade City was really my introduction into adult fantasy, and this book, let me give a synopsis that's probably going to be just so much worse than a synopsis you can get a good read, so you're better off honestly googling it. So Jade City surrounds this country, this island I believe, of K-Con, and in K-Con they have Jade, and Jade is something that people can that people can use in order to enhance their abilities, enhance their human abilities, so they can run faster, have strength, have all of these natural abilities, and even have an armor that's built into their skin. They look more lively. The people of K-Con can have Jade and kind of put them on their body in order for them to have supernatural abilities. Not everyone is able to wield the power of Jade, and not everyone is able to safely wield an immense amount of Jade. And K-Con is based on an East Asian country, so there's a lot of East Asian, I think specifically Chinese cultural references in this book that are just make it top tier. So the main characters in this book are part of the Call family, and they surround 3 siblings. So there's Lon, there's Hilo, and there's Shay. And basically this book goes into kind of the political maneuverings of these 2 kind of mafia mob kind of families, kind of centralization entities. One is the Mountain, which is the rival of the Call family, and then there's the Call family. See, this book goes into all of the political maneuverings between these 2 kind of rival entities, rival gangs, rival mafia control things. I don't even know what to call them, but I'm going to call them rivalries. And it goes into all of the kind of the political machinations between both of them that goes through being a Kekanese kind of gang family that rules over K-Con and rules over Jade. And that was a horrible synopsis, but so much goes on in this book and I don't even know where to start. Okay, listen, this book was a 4.5 star for me, and on Goodreads I did round it down to 4 stars because when I first initially finished this I was just like, okay, this is a 4-star book. But then when I thought about it and I let it sit for 25 seconds, I was like, okay, but it's also a 5-star book, but it's also a 4-star book. So 4.5 is where I landed for this book. This book is very, I don't even know how to describe it. So I was reading it and in the beginning I thought it was slow. But I think I am very much expecting the kind of high fantasy world that I'm used to, and even kind of young adult or even other fantasy worlds. This world is almost as if you're not reading a fantasy. And what I mean by that is she's crafted this world that is not the typical high fantasy world building that you see in a lot of kind of epic fantasy, or you see in a lot of even young adult fantasy that are based on kind of mythological or just non-existent countries. This world, I could see it. I can see it being real. I can see it being in our modern society. Even with the supernatural, the fantastical element of the Jade and the harboring of the Jade, it just seems so realistic. So it almost read, not really, I wouldn't say a contemporary, because you know how I feel about those, but it read very much almost historical or almost kind of anecdotal or memoir. It felt really real, you were talking about events that really happened in a not so distant past. And I think that just tells to Fonda Lee's world building. It was just I could believe, I could see, I could picture all of the things here because it was so close to kind of modern times, but with this fantastical element. And I think I really kind of like that fantasy because I feel it's almost harder to to build into our time kind of a fantastical like element. And I kind of want to gear away from calling this like a low fantasy or high fantasy, low fantasy, because this world, there is a lot of world building that goes into this in order for you to kind of understand the kind of like conflict between the Call and the Mountain Clan. And my favorite part, I'm all over the place because this book was all over the place. My favorite thing about this book, I think, was the sibling relationships. I think it's so played out, honestly. It's played the heck out in a lot of fantasy and a lot of just books in general. Sibling rivalries, like siblings hate each other. One sibling is ascending to the throne, the other one has to kill him. All of these sibling rivalries, we don't get enough of, like, you know, shit is hitting the fan and people are against our family and we gotta band together. Like, yeah, you bugged me, yeah, you stole this from me when we were 12 years old, but right now people are against family and we gotta come together. We have to come together. And that's exactly what happens in Jade City. And it's not so much like, okay, let's put aside all of our differences and we be best friends. Like, no, it's still a lot of that, like that lot of angst that, like, you know, when your sibling does something, it's just like, oh, I hate you, but yeah, you can borrow $10. It's like one of those things. And I love that this book is very much a character driven book. It's very much a character and political intrigue driven book because I love the characters. I love these characters. I love Hilo. The way I was just ready for Hilo to set the world on fire. Like, listen, I give Hilo, myself, you know, not fondly, I give Hilo full permission to set the world on fire. I just want him to set the world on fire. Everybody gotta die. If you're not with the cause, you against the cause. Jade War, which is like already on my shelf. In that book, I just expect Hilo to set the world on fire. That's all I want. That's all I want. I don't ask a lot. I don't ask for a lot. I don't know. I'm all over the place, but the characters in this book made this. And Shay is the sister of the Call family. So she's one of the sisters to Lon and Hilo, who are right now in KCON. They are part of the Call family. They are part of this, like, the dynasty, everything that's going on. They're very deeply embedded in kind of like what it means to be a part of this like mob gang that rules over part of KCON. Shay, just like, she went the road less traveled. She was just like, my family's not gonna decide what like they're gonna do for me. Like, you know, it's very like the typical rebellion, the typical kind of like, I want to find my own path that comes with a lot of kind of like first generation kids who are growing up away from like the countries that their parents grew up with. So it's a very first generation angst, I would categorize, because I kind of understood it after I talked to Tammy, because at first I was just like, Shay needs to get with the program. You need to get with the program. Very much a character-driven book. I absolutely loved this book. I will say something that's very different. This book stressed me out. I am not even going to lie. And this book gave me a lot of anxiety. It gave me a lot of anxiety. So it's something I had to really piece together, just because like everything is kind of like high stakes and everything is on the edge of kind of like falling off a cliff. And it's like I gotta stop reading, but then like I gotta know what happened. So it's very much like that. So just fair warning, but I loved all of the characters. I love the storyline. I love the world building. I love just everything. It was just great. What I think was really, really insightful, there's a lot of things that are just like randomly capitalized, or I thought it was randomly. Things like channeling and things like some of the kind of like very integral part of kind of like the fighting system and kind of like the magic system. There wasn't a lot of elaboration into the history, which makes sense as the fictional book. And then I watched Tammy's video, and she kind of explained kind of just like the intersections of this fictional story with a lot of kind of like Chinese and East Asian cultural references. And after I watched that video, I was like, I have like 4, 5, 10 chapters that I have to go reread, because once you know what you didn't know and then you reread it, it's so different. So this book is 4.5 stars for me. I think I just talked for 10 minutes about this book, and after that, I'm sorry, but that book gave me like a reverse hangover. Like, you know, when you have a hangover and you're only thinking about a book and you kind of like want to pick up things that are similar or just reread the book. I just didn't want to read. I did not want to read. I was like, it's Jade City or die in my head. So I picked up, you know, my old favorite, and I picked up a paranormal romance called Burn For Me. So this is around a girl who is a private detective who is hired by people who kind of own her family's mortgage and her family's rights to her business in order to find this person who is kind of like a supreme magical being who is convicted of arson. She has to team up with this kind of like really, really kind of notorious military person who is kind of known for being just like really, really powerful and kind of really off the rails. So she's a private detective. She has to team up with this other kind of guy, seemingly evil guy, to find this other seemingly evil guy. Listen, I give this book 2.5 stars because I did not enjoy it. Yeah, that's it. I do not enjoy it, and the mystery aspect got a bit tedious and kind of annoying, and it was just really kind of cat and mouse, and then the characters weren't believable. So if you're thinking that this is going to be a slow burn romance, you're wrong. I was wrong. The people are wrong. The categorizations are wrong. This is a no burn romance. There's no romance. Like, I know what a romance is. I believe you do too. This is not it. This is not a slow burn romance. It's a no burn romance. And because that was in my head, it's like if you give me a book and be like, this is a fantasy book. Here's a book that you should read. It's a fantasy book. There's fantastical elements in this book. And it's a contemporary book. I'm gonna be mad. And I'm gonna rate it low. So if I would have read this book knowing that it was like a mystery kind of like whodunit type of book, I would have been like, it's all right, maybe 3.5. But because that's not what I was advertised, I was just like, this is a no burn mystery book, and I was like, I didn't need to read this. I will not be continuing the series just because like 2021, I'm not reading books I don't want to read, and I don't want to read the rest of the series. But if you do like mystery with like tiniest bit of romance, so much that you can't see it, yeah, go ahead and read this book. Yeah, go ahead. If you want that, go ahead. Yeah, but if you want a paranormal romance, you will be disappointed. You'll be disappointed. I'm saying you'll be disappointed. Maybe I was just not in the mood for something like this after Jade City, but I'm pretty sure I gave it a 2 star, not even 2.5 stars. So this was 2 stars, and there's really not much to say about it. The third book I read in January is Born of Darkness by Laura Adrian. I believe I gave this 2 stars as well. And you know, I'm kind of feeling that I was feeling some type of way in January, because 2 stars seems 2 stars. 2 stars. I'm gonna keep it 2 stars on Goodreads, but it was really like a 2.5 stars. But again, this was a paranormal romance. It was really average. It was really average. Not like, when I talk about like paranormal romances, like Gina Showalter, her Lords of the Underworld series is top tier. Gina Showalter's Lords of the Underworld series, Sherilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series, anything by Laura Thalasso. Laura Thalasso is more like fantastical, but like those 3 authors, like top tier paranormal romance, like 5 stars all the way. And then we'll get into like Lindsay Sands is like a 4 tier. We'll get into Kristen Feehan's. She's kind of like a 4 tier of paranormal romance, and then everything else is like, so this is below those 2, so it's a 2 star, because like I feel like when you think of paranormal romance, this is what you think of. It's kind of like not a slow burn, but it's not an insta love. It's a little bit like it's a insta lust, and then it turns into like, it's an insta lust, and then it's something, and then it's like, we're in there, like we're in there, we're really about this, like we're really doing this. And I was just like, I don't believe it. It's unbelievable. I don't believe it. I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I give it 2 stars. If you want like a really cliche kind of typical paranormal romance that doesn't go into kind of like an overarching plot, doesn't have too many elements, isn't gonna make you like really worry about anything but the characters, like there's nothing going on. Dang, that sounds harsh. Hello, it's editing CHIOMA. I realized I gave absolutely 0 synopsis about what this book is about, so here it is. Basically it's about this race of vampires. The book doesn't go too in depth about what is this race of vampires, what makes them unique, or if they're really kind of like traditional vampires. It doesn't really go too in depth into the vampire species, but it really surrounds this main girl who she steals from casinos. She is a very important person to the vampire society, even though she's a human, and she also has some paranormal abilities, like the ability to manipulate machinery. So she uses this ability to steal from casinos, specifically a casino owned by one evil man who's part of her past. She steals from casinos and she uses it to kind of like give to the poor, give to the good, and do things like that. So she is caught trying to commit a heist from this casino. His bodyguards, the man who owns the casino, sends his bodyguards after the girl, and one of the vampire guys saves her, finds out she's a breed mate. Things ensue, and then she tries to commit another heist, and then yeah, that's as synopsises as I'm going to give. I don't know, but that was this book. Now let's get into all the manga I read, because I read a lot of them. I read a lot of manga, and let's talk about it. Okay, so the first manga I read in January was A Sign of Affection Volume 3, and I gave it 5 stars. So A Sign of Affection has slowly become one of my favorite mangas, like one of my favorite mangas. So basically it's Volume 3, so my synopsis is going to be very based on Volume 1, so I don't spoil the next 2 volumes. It's about a girl who is deaf, so she is hard of hearing, and she is mute, so she does not speak. She speaks primarily in sign language. And it starts off with us finding out that she speaks primarily sign language and she's mute when she's on the train and someone asks for directions from her, and she can't give him directions because like he doesn't understand sign language and she doesn't talk. So another guy who goes to her college comes up and gives him directions and then asks her, why can't you give directions? And she types out like, I'm mute, I don't talk. And then they start this kind of like friendship where he is really interested in learning sign language, and she's also really interested in why he's really interested in learning sign language from her, and also his life, because he's kind of like a world traveler, and he's like, I think a sophomore or junior in college, but he travels the world and that's what he does. So from there they start a friendship, and it kind of slowly blossoms into more, but kind of doesn't. And I think it's really interesting the way the author kind of paints both characters, because you see her getting more invested, and in your head you're wondering, is she invested because he's invested in her, because like she is someone who hasn't been like had this kind of like relationship with someone so interested in learning more about kind of like how she navigates the world as someone who is mute and someone who's hard of hearing, or is it something more, and you're kind of questioning his intentions. It's a really fun series, and I love it. In manga a lot, the authors tend to put a lot of translations on like kind of common Japanese idioms that like someone who is an English reader would not understand, and the author does that again in this book. But they also put kind of differences between American sign language and Japanese sign language and how those things are translated through Japanese. It's a lot. So it is a lot, and it's very interesting. I give this manga 5 stars, and in giving this manga 5 stars, I do want to talk about my rating system a tiny bit, because I give this manga 5 stars, and you just saw that I gave Jade City 4.5 stars. My rating system is not ubiquitous across all genres, across all mediums, and across all target audience, because that don't make no sense. I'm not saying that this manga is a better work of literary fiction, literary just artiste than Jade City. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this manga, I enjoyed it up to a rating of 5 stars. It gave me everything that I wanted from a manga, and in full capacity. It's a 5-star manga, and Jade City was a 4.5 star fantasy book. Does that make any sense? Just because like I have a lot of manga that I gave 5 stars, and I don't want them to be compared on the same spectrum, because they're 2 different mediums for one, they're 2 different genres for 2, they're 2 different age target audiences, they're 2 different kind of, there's just so much different for them to not be compared on the same scale. So when I'm reading manga, it's completely different when I'm reading young adult fantasy, completely different when I'm reading contemporary, that's a lie, completely different when I'm reading adult fantasy, completely different when I'm reading sci-fi, completely different by genre, different by age bracket. I'm just saying my 5-star reads are everything. They are perfection. I enjoyed every single thing about it, and even though it may not be the most complex story, it may not be the most like hard-hitting writing, it may not be just New York Times bestseller top tier whatever, I loved it up to a 5-star, and that's all my rating system's gonna be. So 5 stars. So the next 3 mangas are all part of the Waiting for Spring series. They're Waiting for Spring volume 6, 7, and 8. And I am tired of this series. I'm tired of this series. It's dragging on. It's dragging on. It is dragging on. It isn't doing too much, and it's not doing enough. So it is about basically this girl who has trouble making friends, and she eventually ends up befriending these 4 boys. They are the kind of, you know, the idols of the high school. They are also on the basketball team. And she ends up befriending them because they come to her shop, her cafe where she works after school, and they kind of gist, and she's just kind of their waitress, and she begins to get to know them, and they begin to get to know her, and she becomes really good friends with them, as well as another girl who's obsessed with them. So it's kind of that, as well as kind of like her budding like for one of the boys in the group, maybe his budding like for her, maybe everyone else's relationship with her, as well as one of like her old former friends from when she was a child, who she actually finds out is a boy and who is back to win her affection. It sounds like it shouldn't be more than 5 volumes to me, but we're on volume 8 and I'm not even done, and nothing's really happening. Every volume there's about 3 basketball games, and I don't find those. I love basketball. I love basketball. Basketball is my sport of choice after volleyball. But yeah, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's much. And so I gave volume 6 and volume 8 both 3 stars, and I gave volume 7 4 stars. So after volume 7, I felt like, okay, something's about to happen. We about to speed up. We about to pick up some excitement. So I don't know if I'm gonna be continuing on. Maybe they're all on Kindle Unlimited, and I've just been binging Kindle Unlimited manga like no woman's business for the past 5 weeks. So I might read it, but it's cute. It's very light. Not much happens. So if you want just a really good in-between manga, Waiting for Spring is like, it's an in-between manga. the next manga I read is 2 volumes of Our Fake Marriage by Kiwi Tokina. And this manga, you see, after reading Take a Hint and Danny Brown, I now realize that I love the fake dating trope, the fake marriage trope. It's fun. It's fun. It's a good time. It's a fun time. I'm reading both of these 2 stars, and the thing is, I cannot continue on just because it has that, I'm not gonna call it a trope, but it's this thing where they blur the line of consent, and I truly do not like that at all. I cannot, like, my brain cannot kind of like wash over that. Like, I can't just be like, but you know, her actions, no. Like, she does this thing where she's not saying no, but it's not an enthusiastic yes, and you know, it's an enthusiastic yes or it's dead. So that was really hard to read, and I didn't really enjoy it. And so I thought in the first book it was kind of like a gif, a cliff, a dip. I don't know what sound effect I'm looking for, but it was something. So I was like, okay, maybe in the second one she'll like stop doing that. Didn't happen. So because of that, I'm not continuing on with this manga. It's a 2-star manga. It would have been better if it didn't have that like blurred line of consent. That's just kind of ugly. I don't really enjoy that. So that's Our Fake Marriage. Now let's get to the star manga of the show, and that is The Wolf Boy Is Mine volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4 by Yoko Nigiri. I love these. These were a fun time, and they were a great fun time, and they weren't like Kindle Unlimited mangas are hits or miss then a hit. Like, you have to go through and really put in hard work to find like that manga. I found it. This was so good, and I feel like it has a lot to do with the fact that I was really in the mood for a good shoujo manga. I was just in the mood for it. I was craving it, and this Wolf Boy Is Mine gave it to me in full capacity. Like, I gave 3 of the volumes 4 stars and 1 5-star because it was just good. It was just good. It didn't have any like gross tropes. It didn't have any insta love. It didn't have, and not that insta love is a gross trope, but I'm talking after reading Our Fake Marriage and having that consent blur thing, I was about to hang up the towel for January on manga, but Our Wolf Boy Is Mine was great. It had like some paranormal elements, and then it had some kind of like little like backstabbing, a little just kind of like, I felt for the main character. Like, she wasn't kind of like a whiny main character. She wasn't kind of like a helpless main character. Like, she really had her own mind, her own opinions. Like, she really was like in control of her own life, and I really enjoyed that. And I even enjoyed the side characters, their side friendship. It was just a fun time. And yes, I rated them 4 and 5 stars because they gave me everything I wanted from a shoujo manga. Like, within manga like this, it was top tier. It was top tier. Yes, I'm saying this is up there with Bleach, Inuyasha, Death Note, Full Metal. Like, this is up there. I mean, none of those are shoujo, but this is up there with shoujo manga. So I really like this. This series made me really, really happy. It's on Kindle Unlimited. If anyone wants to read it and like, you know, prove me right, go ahead, because it was a fun time. Yeah, so those are all the books I read in January. It wasn't like a bad reading month by any means. I read 3 books and I read like 10 manga. So like, it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't a really good like book month, if it makes sense. But either way, I had a lot of fun with what I did read. So let me know if you've read any of these books, what you did read in January. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll talk to y'all later.